843 TV, where the Lowcountry comes to speak.
WHHI-TV, TV,
where communities come to speak. And welcome to WHHI-TV, TV. And today we're going to have a very important conversation for being on an island in Hilton Head. We're going to be talking about how important the storm water pump stations are. And I have Erik and Jeff Netzinger here with me because, you know, we live on this beautiful island, and when we have hurricanes and all kinds of storms, it's a very important situation to deal with. And today I'd like to have that conversation with you. You know, Erik, you're the project manager, yes, and also Ted, you are the engineer. So tell us about let's start with how many storm pump stations do we have right now?
Well, we currently have 4 stormwater pump station facilities strategically located on the island. We have one at Shipyard and Wexford communities. We have one just outside of Hilton Head Plantation over by the Jarvis Creek Park, and then we have one in Sea Pines community.
And when was our first one put in?
Sea Pines is our oldest pump station, and that was put in circa 1989. So it's one of our older ones.
And what's the latest?
The latest one would be Wexford. Is that?
Wexford and Shipyard were both constructed in 2003 as a pair of pump stations.
So Jeff, you're the engineer, so could you tell us what's the importance of these stations for us being on the island? Why do we need them?
So it's a barrier island. It's basically kind of a real flat sandbar. When it rains, with the development we've had over the years on the island, the water really isn't excited about going anywhere. It's so flat. So it needs a little push and a little help in certain areas, more so than just the gravity flow that usually drains systems. So there's been a lot of master planning done over the years by Beaufort County and the town, and identified locations where a pump station to help pull the water and push it out was a better solution to protect properties and
right.
roads
When
from flooding.
did we find out that we had a problem, or were we thinking just to avoid the problem? You know, did something happen that made us think, oh, we need to really put these in now?
Yeah. As development increases, you know, there's more and more impervious surface, whereas before when it was sand and forest, it would soak in. So the more impervious you develop, the more runoff that you get, and as that develops, then the communities will experience, you know, higher water in extreme rainfall events. And again, these pump stations are there to protect us when the real heavy rainfalls associated generally with tropical storms and hurricanes hit. So when we get those super events, that's when these facilities are critical to be functioning properly to get that water out to protect homes from flooding. So,
you know, that's really interesting. I'm always curious, what's the highest elevation on the island? I always wonder about that. Do you know that at all?
Well, the island has a kind of a high area on the north end towards the top of the shoe in Hilton Head Plantation, and there's elevations there that I believe are in the
19.
15 to 18, yeah, 20 foot range, but most of the island is definitely less than 10. You know, so we have 7s and 8s and 6s a lot of places on the island, and that's not too high.
I was just going to think about hurricanes. You know, when I think about the different categories, especially when we had the big one, you know, how high of the elevation do you need to be for the water? So these are all important questions that we have and ideas. So Erik, with your perspective and what we're trying to do, is there a plan that's coming forward that we're going to talk about in town meetings?
That's a really good question, and Jeff is probably better suited to answer that. But I know, you know, just from my level, being tasked to, you know, find the solutions to fixing our deficiencies at some of these aging pump stations, you know, it's incredibly important that we go in with that in mind.
So the stormwater utility that is our operating fund is an enterprise fund. So it's got its separate revenue stream from the general fund of the town. So we have responsibility to spend the monies that are collected via the stormwater fee that comes in on everyone's annual tax bill on infrastructure related to stormwater. It's exclusively for that use. So we marshal those funds and decide, you know, with the guidance of town council and staff on how to allocate those resources and use them year to year. But the pump stations, again, the stress test with Matthew showed us that we needed to bring some of these up to snuff that hadn't had major overhauls in 20, 30 years. So our program to overhaul those has become our highest priority within the stormwater utility the last 2 years. And it'll continue until the other, again, Jarvis was rehabilitated last year, and the Lawton pump station in Sea Pines is currently being rehabilitated. Right. And that's the project that Erik is working on right now. And he successfully got the Jarvis Creek pump station up to snuff last year, very successful. So,
oh, right. Terrific. I mean, so we're making things happen.
We are. And one of the challenges that we probably should point out is that we are working within the window of our hurricane season. So everything had to be planned around that. So we were very methodical in terms of how our planning process incorporated our assessments, and then coming up with probable solutions and cost estimates, and then working with our on-call contractors to actually facilitate that work within the short window. Because, you know, as we all know, we have a pandemic right now, so that's having an impact on, you know, logistics and whatnot. So it's been very challenging, but, you know, we're getting there. Yeah.
Well, I'm just terrific. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having us.
A lot of great information, and this is something to read in the paper and keep abreast of too. All right, we'll be right back with more 843 TV.